You know, it's a long jump from 0 to $65 billion, and to get there out of a budget that we currently have, I don't see how the math would work. Let's see. You know what? I'm going to open it up to some questions because we did get a little bit of a late start here. You guys are more than welcome to go through this, the flip through. This is available online too, and you can kind of scroll through it. In fact, hopefully we can get that on TV too, where people can actually scroll through it and look at it. So I do want to open up the floor, and actually, if we have Kate and Representative Nolan here, if you guys want to say anything, you're more than welcome to. But any questions at all? Yeah, Pete.
I'm a big advocate of mass transit as well as cars. This, I assume, addresses that too. I mean,
It does.
The money you're talking about raising is for mass transit as well as traffic. So it's
Yeah.
trains and buses
Yep.
and that again can take people off the roads and help to reduce, bottlenecks.
Yeah, and I think that's what most people don't realize what the state of Connecticut does. So the question was, or the comment actually was, mass transit is very important, and that's how we get people off the roads and moving. Most people don't know that part of our DOT budget, our road budget, is that. And again, anytime you take a penny out of one area, it affects one group, and you don't realize it. So we said, why are we paying for trains? There's people up in Hartford that say, why would we pay for them? These people live in Greenwich, they live in Stamford, they're working in New York, they make plenty of money. Well, they have feet too. Right now, it makes sense to live in Connecticut for them because, okay, the transportation to get to New York City is $30 a day. The taxes to live in New York and the price of the houses to live in New York is way more expensive. If we start making that even, where it comes to a point where we stop investing in mass transit and the trains are slow. There's some trains that, 35 years ago used to take an hour to get there and back, and now they're taking an hour and 45 minutes because the infrastructure, even on the rail system, isn't what it used to be. So again, we got to think of our transportation holistically. We have to think trains, buses, when you're thinking of money. Because if we don't invest in those trains, and all of a sudden we're encouraging a guy, wait a minute, you know what? It was costing me $30 a week, now it costs me $40 a week to take a train. I'll just take my car in the city. I don't care. That's one more car on the road that's going to congest everything else and slows it down. So again, even the toll study, when we did that, people said, wow, why would you spend $10 million on a toll study? It makes no sense. If I did tolls, I would just walk down and say, here, that exit, this exit. It's way more complicated than that. Everyone's job is different. I'm a sheet metal worker. I'll tell you how to build a handrail. I'm sure Nolan can tell us how to do police work. There's people that went to school on congestion, on engineering, on road engineering, that actually put in time to actually even look into companies and see when they get in work, when they get out of work. That's all going to be this big combination of things that happen that will eventually, hopefully, make our state move faster. Right? I'm sorry.
I got a question for you, Joe. What's this thing right here?
Cell phone.
What can it do?
A lot.
Okay. What can it do, though? That's the question I'm asking.
What can a cell phone do?
Mm-hmm.
It could be your GPS. It could be your connection to the
Bingo.
world.
GPS. Okay, so I'm from out of state. I'm driving along. I know Connecticut's got 50 gantries. First off, I'm driving through the state. As we all know, they're going to another state. They're going to Cape Cod. They're going to New Hampshire. They're going to Rhode Island. They're going wherever. So they're looking at their phone. They're saying, you know what? I've got an extra 45 minutes to kill. And I'm from Pennsylvania, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to download Waze on my phone, and it's going to come up with all the tolls in Connecticut. I'm going to avoid those tolls. Now, Massachusetts, they put in tolls. And as we know, Connecticut owes Massachusetts somewhere around 20-something million bucks for unpaid tolls over the course of, I don't know how long.
Yeah.
So what makes you think that people from out of state are gonna come into this state and pay their tolls? And
I-
even drive through these gantries?
I would
Because
say
it's not gonna
first-
happen.
First off, if you have an extra 45 minutes and you're gonna try to avoid tolls, you need an extra 5 hours and 45 minutes. Because if you're gonna take Route 1 through Connecticut, or take an off-road off the highway, that wouldn't happen. As far as us owing $20 million to another state, where it makes some folks boil one way, I'm boiling mad the other way. Why do my residents owe somebody else $20 million for using their roads? Why is that a thing?
Because they never paid it.
They never paid it, correct. But if we owe them, right? We had the governor of Massachusetts this past year ask us to suspend the driver's license of folks that haven't paid their tolls, right? I will not vote for that until we start charging those people money. We have to get, what I'm saying is, why wouldn't it be even, here's another thing, when they say, how do you pay the tolls? I'm just gonna give you a quick example. I went to go renew my driver's license just a month and a half ago, right? I walk up to the counter, sir, your license is suspended. Suspended? You just sent me a letter saying to come in and renew my license. And they said, yeah, that's just standard random letters we send, but you actually have been suspended. The state of Rhode Island called and suspended my license. Why? I thought it was a mistaken identity. I didn't know what it was. I called Rhode Island, and she goes, oh, yeah, hold on. I got to go into the file cabinet for this one. I hear her clunking around. She comes back to the phone and says, were you driving a Ford Taurus in 1991? Did you do 45 miles an hour in a 35 mile an hour zone? I said, I would have no idea about that, but if you're saying it, it must be true. She said it was a $67 ticket and you didn't pay it. And you're suspended. My wife had to go to Rhode Island to court. This is a month ago. So the technology is going to get there. Those folks that owe the $20 million, they're going to pay. My argument is, why aren't the Massachusetts people paying? Why are they driving through our state for free? That is what gets me upset. Go ahead, Martha, I'm sorry.
So the reason why Connecticut people aren't paying the Massachusetts people is because we don't have tolls, so we don't have Easy Pass. So once we get the tolls, we'll all have Easy Pass, and we're gonna have to pay when we go to Massachusetts. Like, I don't have Easy Pass. I mean, I had it once, and one of my kids borrowed it, and I never got it back again. But,
That's
you know,
a
those
story
days,
that's been
right?
repeated many times.
But you know what I mean? So we don't have the Easy Pass, so we're getting that little letter in the mail saying you owe $5. I just got mine, I owe $5.27, and I paid it the second I got it. But once we have tolls, we're all gonna have the Easy Pass. So it's not like Massachusetts is gonna come in and not pay us, because they're gonna have the Easy Pass,
Exactly.
right?
And to go back to I was on the Lee Elsey show talking about tolls, and as I'm driving away, I'm hearing the response to it. And a woman calls in and says, you know that Rep. Dela Cruz, he keeps saying that we gotta charge these people with out-of-state plates, that we need to catch up to them, and they should share in fixing our roads. She says, you know what? Rep. Dela Cruz doesn't know what he's talking about. I have 2 neighbors in my neighborhood that live in Connecticut, and they've registered their cars in Vermont. So they're really Connecticut residents. And I go, my point exactly. Here, we have folks that live here for, supposedly 6 months in a day, and they have these Florida cars that they don't pay any taxes on. And then they drive our roads, and all they do is coming up for a couple months out of the year, but they're not even paying that much in taxes. They're not, just anytime they put gas in their car. That's it. And if it's an electric car, by the way, here's one thing that nobody talks about, and it frustrates me. The people on the other side of this issue, when I mention electric cars, a lot of it is, well, electric cars are never going to happen. I remember, I'm telling you, they've been telling me electric cars for the last 50 years. I haven't seen it. Don't believe a politician. Don't believe a guy that doesn't know anything about building a car. If you want to believe anybody, look what Ford and GM did this past year. $22 billion in investment in electric cars. And what does that mean to us? If we all agree that 70% of the people on our roads are Connecticut residents, and we're paying for 100% of the road use, what happens in 10 years when 10% of the people have electric cars? If you have an electric vehicle, and I do suggest to all my friends, because I would do it if I could afford it, if we do not put tolls on the road, go buy an electric car. It's free. You will not have any part in fixing the roads in Connecticut. You can live here, you might as well become, as far as funding your highways, you might as well be living on planet Mars. Because it doesn't matter. If you have an electric car today, you pay $0.00 to use the highway. Yep.
I wanted to backtrack to something you said earlier about trucks.
I know, I was gonna, you know everything about trucks.
Okay, IFTA is paid on a quarterly basis. You report your mileage that you traveled in each state, and you compute it and you send it in, and you either get a credit for where you bought the fuel or you pay extra based on where you ran. So every state gets their cut of the mileage. They base it on miles per gallon
Yeah.
of what your fleet gets.
Yep.
You pay that. Your registration on your truck, it's a portion. So every state gets whatever mileage apportioned to your state.
Yep.
So that being said, the trucking industry pays a lot. And personally, as running trucks, I don't really care if you put the tolls up because everybody here is going to pay for it. We're not going to eat the cost. I mean, that's not reasonable. So
Yep.
we will pass the cost to the consumer.
Yep.
Just as example, New York, every bridge over the Hudson is tolled. To get across the George Washington Bridge one way in a truck is $100. New Rochelle, there's another $7.50. And I calculated it out based on your 50 gantries or whatever it was when the miles per rate. For the truck to get from Greenwich to the border is going to be $50. So that's all costs that we're going to have to pay along with paying tolls on the cars.
Yep. And I would say too.
So it's gonna, your gasoline, I mean, no train pulls up to a gas station and unloads. Big Y, Stop and Shop, wherever you go to eat, it's all delivered by truck. So I mean, all that cost is gonna get added in. So there's a lot more cost than what everybody thinks there is.
He's 100% right,
He
because
is.
this is gonna come back down to the consumer. They did an interview with a gas company here in Connecticut. If you put these tolls in, it's gonna cost them an extra $400,000 just to have their trucks go through the state of Connecticut, which evidently is gonna come back down to the consumer.
Yeah, it's not gonna cost them anything, it's gonna cost us.
It's gonna cost us
Because we're gonna pay
We're gonna pay
in the
more.
end. We're just, I can tell you right now, I'm just gonna add it to the bill.
But
I mean,
let me-
it's
let
no
me- let me-
problem.
but
I
let
mean,
me-
yeah, you wanna pay it.
But
go
the
ahead.
65 million, no matter what we're gonna pay in the end, if we all agree, but if we all agree that it's $65 million, we all agree that this is bucket of money that we need, right? To fix the roads to where they need to be, we definitely all pay. This is what I will point out to you. Being someone that is in the industry, I ship stuff all the time, right? That guy that you're talking about, they don't show up with apportioned plates. Sometimes they show up with
That's illegal.
F-350s
That's illegal.
with a, that's what they do. Now we can legislate for how we think the world should work, or we can legislate for how the world works. There's people that ship cars all over the country. People that do all this shipping and they don't pay. And let me just say this. New Jersey is one of the biggest shipping ports in our country. The Panama Canal opened up, we can get the mega ships there. Imagine us being between two of the largest cities in America, two of the most populous cities in America, and we own the road in between it. The trucks that you mentioned that are paying, and it's gonna increase these costs, X, Y, and Z, I get that. How many trucks are going directly through Connecticut without ever stopping? If you live in New York right now and you want to take a bus to Boston, or if you live in Boston and you want to take a bus to New York, there's 65 options a day, right now. So tomorrow morning, is every one of those buses, are they all sending a check to Ned Lamont at the end of the year saying, we took this many trips through on our bus? I don't believe that's happening.
They have to. They have to
happen with
report.
IFTA.
Just
So-
told
You gotta report
When
your
you
honest
go
state
through the
line.
state, you have to pay the
But
Connecticut,
if
and they audit you. Each state is responsible for auditing a certain percentage of trucking companies.
So, but if your dollar amount is $50 to drive through the state,
Well, that's a toll amount. I didn't count
That's
the
a toll
fuel
amount.
or the plate amount. That's what I'm telling
so
you.
if I go by what Rhode Island saw, and there's 2,000 trucks going through, or 200,000 trucks going through in 1 month, and you do the math, and we collected $14 million in federal excise tax this last year. If you do the math, that means we collected $5 for every truck that went through our state. That seems low to me. No.
The trucks only make up 5% of the traffic on the road.
How
That's-
much?
You think it's more, but it's not. It's about 5%.
But the damage that they do to the road is higher on the other end. If trucks do way more damage than the cars do. That's actually agreed on both sides. I don't know when
then
we,
we pay more than a car.
yeah, you guys do.
So, all right,
Yeah,
you see
so,
a car paying a portion of their plate to another state, we pay federal use tax, that's $550 a truck every year. There's a lot of hidden costs that you don't know. I mean, you can't just say that they don't pay.
No,
They
they
do
do.
pay. What it is a lot of it is federal, and that's up to your senator to get the money back to the state and the highways and all that.
14 million was the number.
Well, that's
So-
just IFTA, that's just fuel tax you're talking about.
Yeah, fuel tax on the,
Well, you bring up a good point. I liked your other point. How about the gas tax lowering it? How about lowering the diesel tax? Let's get them to stop here, fuel up. You have a grocery tax, you'll make more money. They did it in the late 90s and it worked. For
Yeah.
some reason, we don't do that now.
I'm for that, go ahead.
So another way to look at this is, if you're looking at the tolls, that means that the money that's coming in is from the people that are utilizing the roads. Your 65 billion, one way or the other, it's got to be spent. We know that. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
That cost is there irregardless. If it's not done this way, they're going to rob Peter to pay Paul. So that means all these people that never hit the roads, you know, grandma over here in the house that never gets out on the road, stays at home, all these different people that never utilize the roads, they're going to offset that cost because it's going to get passed in another direction via the 65 million. But if it's the tolls, every person that pays is going to be paying because they are receiving the use of the road, whether it's from the consumer on the end of it or directly from using the roads. Otherwise, it's going to get passed to people through the cuts that still have to be done, and that means that people that are never going to have any use for the roads are going to be paying it.
And, yeah, go ahead, Mike.
And so you talk about the taxes and it's going to be passed on to the consumer, but once you improve the roads, what it's going to do to the productivity of the business people. I'm a visiting nurse. I say it all the time, but I can't tell you the number of times we're just stuck on 95 because of the traffic. You know, you're a nurse making 35 to 45 bucks an hour, and you are sitting there, and your company has just lost a lot of money. And so when we get the money and we improve the roads, and we don't have that backup in East Lyme and that backup in Stonington, like you said, is it the Pearl Harbor Bridge in New Haven that's like unbelievable? I used to go to New Haven once a week and I hated it. Now their productivity has improved so much, those visiting nurses in New Haven, because they just fly there. We used to take a half hour, takes 10 minutes. So it might cost the trucking company more or the big Ys more in the tolls, but it's going to be less with the productivity. And every business is going to have that, has people traveling, is going to have such better productivity once we fix all of our.
In the end, though, Big Y sees bills in the form of tax bills for the building. They get taxed in many different ways, not just trucks that deliver to them. So in the end, if we say, you know what, no tolls, we're going to go it alone, and the cost gets passed down. When I say pass down cost, it means pass down cuts. So if us in Hartford say there's no money in 10 years, and this monster is eating away at our budget, the cut goes down to you in Groton when we say we're only going to give you half the ECS money. So if you own a building, you own the truck, and you own the building where you keep your trucks in Groton, that property tax will go up. Why? Because we are definitely not including everybody that uses the roads. There's a lot of people that just, and again, because of the industry I'm in, I see it all the time. We do electroplating in Boston. We make a part, and we're in competition with another company that's in New Jersey. We always think of big tractor trailers that are using our roads and not paying. This guy has a van, and he can fit all these parts in a van, and he drives trucks right up there. He's not sending the check to Ned Lamont, and he's definitely not getting gas in Connecticut. So he comes all the way up to Boston. It's a chromating process that is kind of exclusive. It's proprietary, so we all use it, this one guy. So he drives through. That truck's going by my shop once a week. When I go down his way, if I got to go through New York or into New Jersey for any services, there's some General Magna plate down there that we use for Teflon coating. I pay his tolls. He doesn't pay mine. So I'm going to fix the roads, my own roads. It's going to be my fire department that covers if he gets in an accident. All those things happen. He enjoys all the privileges of using my roads, but pays $0 and 0 cents. Unless he accidentally messes up and forgets to buy gas in New Jersey. That's the reality. And again, we can say that's not what's happening, but it happens every single day. And that's where we are right now. So to me, you know, if the electric cars come, and again, there's people the guy told me on the radio before he hung up, well, I like gas, and I like the smell of gas, and I'm gonna always have a gas. He says, I'm gonna always have a gas car, point blank. I can only think of the conversations back in 1920, when the guy on the road said, motor car, you gotta fill up with gas? I take care of my horses and they pull my carriage reliably, efficiently, for 100 years. Those gas cars will never go anywhere. I guarantee that was said at some point in some time. There's no doubt in my mind that people that were using carriages thought that was the mode of transportation and could not see the future. Well, we have the same type of people right now that absolutely cannot see the future right in front of their face. When Ford and GM invest $11 billion, they're not building all those cars because they don't think they're going to sell them. They're going to sell them. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
How much money in this toll is gonna go to mass transit rail and everything that don't pay nothing? Our infrastructure is gonna get shafted because we use toll money to
Subsidized rail.
It goes.
Tell me about the New Britain to Hartford busway.
Well,
Yeah.
but
I want
some,
to know, but I heard that we lose $17.5 million a year running that.
and we lose more on Shoreline East, and we lose more on Amtrak.
There you
And
go.
your toll's
So-
gonna pay for it.
And then we're just going to subsidize.
But again, remember, it all goes back to
You do
this.
need public transit. I
But
agree,
remember-
but you've got to prioritize or see what's effective and what's not.
Prioritize.
Exactly.
So let's talk
So why would
prioritize.
you keep dumping $17.5 million into a busway like that?
Let's talk about prioritize though. Say
Let's talk
you're
about the busway.
say you're the guy getting on the train that lives in Stamford, and you make $1 million a year, and you're getting taxed in Connecticut. If Connecticut was a seesaw, we'd be about 10,000 feet in the air, because all the money happens on that side of the state. Just ask them; they'll tell you. They pay almost 70% of the taxes that are generated in our state, just in about 5 towns on the western end. So now people are saying, why should we subsidize that train? What part are they of Connecticut? All these people are saying, why? Because I pay 70%, and that's how I get to work.
That
So
wasn't my question, though. I
You're
didn't say
asking
that
about-
that was a problem. I said you do need public transit. I'm asking for something like that busway. Why would we invest money like that? That's.
I think it was a look into the future. I think people thought that it was going to be
It's like
maybe.
Field of Dreams. Build it and they'll come.
You know what though? Yeah, but we have to look into the future. Like I said, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people that 100% don't believe in electric cars. It
Well,
frustrates me
how much money you dump in the hole before you cut it off?
because it takes about 7 years for us to really start making money on a toll.
So-
In 7 years, we could have 5% electric cars on the road. All right, and back.
I just want to say something about the public transit. I mean, what you said just there is a great argument for having toll, because right now, you know, it costs money to take the train, it costs money to get on the busway, it doesn't cost money to drive, so people don't do it.
How do you drive?
You run it for free.
Yeah.
It doesn't cost money to drive.
It
You
doesn't.
don't insure your car or pay taxes or pay for
Yeah, but you're gonna
gas.
have the car no matter what.
Yeah, if you
I
have-
mean,
you have
that's
your
like,
car
you're
sitting,
gonna
yeah.
go- If I'm gonna go from here to New York, I'm gonna take the train. I love the train.
You are?
I am, I love the train.
Well, it's definitely from here to New York. If you go to the Yankee Stadium, when I was in high school, we used to go to Yankee Stadium every Tuesday home game. It was $6 tickets. My brother worked at EB. He rented a bus, like the 15-passenger van, grinders, and beer. Cost us $20. And we would leave New London at the spot, and in 2 hours and 10 minutes, we were sitting in Yankee Stadium. He sped a little bit, yeah, I admit that, but in 2 hours and 10 minutes. Try that trip today, it's 4 hours, maybe 5, depending on how it goes for you.
On the train?
On the highway. If you drive,
Still do it.
2.5 hours.
100%. Go.
I can go sit in traffic.
If you
still
live-
make it free.
Just don't
Hold
go
on.
Saturday.
It ain't no
If you
5
leave-
hour ride.
If you leave Tuesday night at 4:30 or 4 o'clock and go to New York, what time do you get there?
I'll be there in 3 hours.
Going through Bridgeport and all that traffic?
Yeah.
You don't
Joe,
have the
I've
big
been
truck. You're
driving the
driving
highway
through
for
people.
30 years.
Yeah.
I know what, I've been up and down this road.
And I got guys that
all the
work in
time.
Stanford every day, and just the other day, it took them 4 hours to get home from Stanford.
Okay, yeah, if you have a
That's-
crack, I mean, but that's not every day.
almost every day. I'll bring you, Uhas. You can talk to Uhas.
Yeah, I can talk to him.
Ask him how long
it's
it
about
takes him.
2-hour ride.
Go ahead,
Not bad,
Kat.
I gotta go back to what you were saying before about the, subsidizing the public transportation. I mean, I don't think there's anybody that's gonna argue that we don't need public transportation. We do. But when you talk about wanting to balance the needs of the guy who makes $1 million that works in the city that wants to take the train and pay a reasonable amount versus the needs of a person who's gonna pay $500 in a year that can't afford that $500 in tolls, that's really what I'm hearing is you're saying that guy that makes $1 million that lives in Greenwich is more important than that old lady that's got to go to her doctor's appointments that can't afford that $500. And that's where my struggle is. I don't have an answer for that.
And I didn't mean it to sound like that.
But that's what it
I
sounds
was
like.
using the $1 million guy as an example, but let's face it, most of the guys are thousandaires, not millionaires. Most of the people that are working in New York do take that train, and if you made it $30, they wouldn't be able to make it to work.
Right, no, I hear you.
Yeah,
The
so-
root of the question is still where you can say whatever you want, it's going to cost $500, you could take the train, you could do this, you could do that. There's a lot of us. I say us because I'm one of them. I can't afford to take the toll, so I'm going to have to pay the time and drive on the back roads more often than I would like. What do you say to me? What do you say to all of these people here? I'm reading these comments that can't afford the tolls.
But what's disingenuous about the whole argument that we don't need tolls and we're going to just borrow money and do it on our own is the fact that we don't put tolls on the road doesn't mean that you've saved all this money. It doesn't mean that you're not paying. Again, if there's a $65 million hole that needs to be filled, how's it get filled? The other side is telling me that they're going to find all this money inside of a budget where in 2 years ago we made that cut that I talked about earlier that kicked people off Medicare savings program. Kicked them off. We're gonna be ruining programs that help people survive. This isn't, and again, I'm not this bleeding heart guy. I worked hard my whole life. I understand the value of hard work. What about the most vulnerable people in our society? Where did they land? And in the end, because you are a community person, I see you posting stuff all the time, how you love a community. When they come knocking at your door at the school saying, Kat, they cut our ECS again. It's getting swallowed up by this $65 billion monster in the room. What do we do? And you're going to say, well, I'm not going to live in a town where 45 kids are going to class in one school. I'm not going to a town where kids don't have notebooks and papers because I love my town and I love my kids. So it's not really tolls don't go on and you don't pay anything. It's tolls don't go up and all the municipalities get cut. That is an absolute fact. And the fact that the people that proposed it came out so strongly against the consolidation of small and rural schools is almost laughable to me. Because who's going to be hurt? All they were asking was to consolidate all these schools, which I was against, by the way. I was against the consolidation part of it, but where do you cut? Where do you find $2.5 billion?
I can tell you right now, I have a brother that's a state trooper. He can will his pension to his children. So that means after he dies, if he chooses to skip his spouse, we, everybody in this room, state of Connecticut, is going to be paying a pretty much a full salary for how many years? Until, one of his kids might live to the ripe old age of 90 years old. It's stuff like that we need to be looking at, not cutting to, not going to cut
And
school budgets.
I've actually never heard of that. Just to address, just so you guys know what we have done with state employees, because they are the evil empire. Everyone hates them. They're the worst.
I'm sort of.
The legislator made the system.
I wasn't
and
trying to
they
start an
took
argument.
it.
No.
What I meant was there's other
Rightfully
areas.
So.
of waste.
When you make things like what allowed them to do what they're doing, I would do it too if I was them. So you can't victimize them. They did what was available to them, and that was smart on their part.
Yeah,
The
but
people that put the rules in place are the ones to blame.
What I will say though is if it makes anyone feel better, the new Connecticut state worker is a glorified Walmart worker. That's all they are. We're not going to see these. We do have state police, and I'm embarrassed to say it, but these new people that are starting these new DOT jobs, these new. My cousin is a police officer. He did exactly what his father did. A police officer was in New London. My cousin, he went and joined the force in Groton, and he says, I can't believe the guy that was here 3 years more than me, he gets more vacation time than me. He has a pension. I don't have a pension. You should see what the guy that's been here for 10 years has. And we think this is the positive direction to go in our state, and we are. We are absolutely destroying values and that we've had in place for years and years and years. And we will continue to cut those state employees. the employees that you're talking about are tier 1 employees that are all going to be gone, and because of either attrition through death or whatever happens, because they're aging folk, and they'll be gone, and we'll be left with a generation of people that will never ever be able to retire. And those are facts. So, I don't like to beat on them too much because they already have taken a lot of different cuts, and they'll tell you they struggle like we do. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Listen, I got a friend that works for the state of Connecticut. He's been with the state of Connecticut for almost about 20 years now. Okay? He got laid off in 2008 around the Malloy administration, which was an epic failure of the state. Okay? And that's the reason why we're probably in the hole that we're in now. But the fact of the matter is, he got back to the state of Connecticut. And you realize when he got laid off, he is getting everything back for the union. He's getting a $70,000 pay increase, which he's getting back all that money. He's getting all of his back pay back. He's getting all of his benefits back. He's getting all of his vacation time back. Okay? I've gotten laid off from jobs. I never got any money from previous jobs that I got laid off. But he's a state employee. He gets all that money back. He gets everything back. Joe, you put in these tolls, it's going to hurt businesses across the state. Plain and simple. You got Mystic Village over there. You got downtown Mystic. You think anybody's going to stop driving through the state of Connecticut from out of state? They're going to try to visit these places? It's going to kill small businesses.
Again,
Plain simple.
They have tolls in New York, Massachusetts, California, Florida. But if tourism, if tolls kill tourism,
Everybody's moving out of New York and they're going down to Florida. Now, that's a good argument that you're raising up. That a lot of states do have tolls. Yes, I will agree with you to that point. But other states, they cut the income tax. They don't have income tax. They don't have a car tax. They put tolls on new highways to fund those new highways that they put in. If you finished off Route 11 and put a toll in, I'd say I wouldn't have a problem with that, Joe. I honestly wouldn't have a problem.
I wish we could.
But
We need the money to
we're
do
talking
it.
about putting 50 gantries in the state of Connecticut. I drive from Groton to Essex. I work for the bank, okay? And I've talked to a couple bank loan officers. And let's be honest with you, you know what their prediction is? If we did put the 50 tolls in the state of Connecticut, people are going to be coming in and dropping their house keys off and saying, I can't afford to live here anymore. That's what's going to happen.
We are number 3 in household goods moving out of state.
Well, remember,
Nation.
I will address that real quick because this is one of my favorite subjects to talk about. It's not a really toll-related issue, but remember, this is a once-in-a-generation thing. We have a ton of people that retired from a state that makes a good wage and a good living. They're leaving the state for what I would call a cheaper state, Florida, and we all agree with that. But when you look at the numbers, and if you're a brand new state trooper that gets hired in Miami, Florida, you get hired at $31,000 a year. At the end of the year, and it does affect us. Listen,
The cost of living is less there.
I love that answer. I love it. But let me tell you
that's
why
the
you're
right
wrong.
answer.
Let me tell you why you're wrong. The police officer gets that $31,000 in his hand, and then he goes to Washington D.C. and he says, "Give me another 10 because I live under the federal poverty line." In Florida, 25% of the population gets the earned income tax credit, which means they're living under the poverty level, which includes police, firefighters, teachers, all these things that we pay our people enough where they don't receive that, right? So what I want to do, and I'm going to work on the federal government with this, with Courtney and everybody else, but what I hope we can do as a state is start sticking up for ourselves and say, if you're any kind of municipal employee anywhere in the country and you file your taxes, at the end of the year, you don't get the earned income tax credit. If you're a police officer in Miami, you should be just like the police officer here in Groton. If Officer Nolan feels like the police union needs a raise here in London, guess where they go? To the mayor's office. And they knock on the door and say, we need a raise. Guess where they go in Florida? They go to Washington, D.C. and take all the money. Connecticut sends $1 to Washington, D.C. We get back 87 cents. Florida sends $1 to Washington, D.C. They get $1.87 back on the dime. How do we compete with that? Again, I'll tell you, I'll be honest with you guys.
Representatives in Congress, I guess. That's
No.
what you need to do.
There you go.
That's what it is. That's what it is. You
So-
can't. How can you compare? It's two different parts of the country.
It's apples.
It's not. No,
The
it's not.
expenses are so high here. You have to keep up with that. That's why the wage rate is so high.
But if you listen to my
What did I just say? You pay $100 for your freight to come over the George Washington Bridge. So you're jacking up the cost on everything. So in order for people
Yeah,
to
'cause
live
you have-
here, it's more expensive.
Because we're not,
Absolutely.
Groton has 70 police officers on duty. I want to actually take the 7 officers that we're paying for Orlando through earned income tax credit and dress them up like Orlando police officers. So at least in Groton we know, I get the economy. The way the economy works now is we don't have 7 police officers in Groton. We have 77. 7 officers we're paying for from another state where all those folks get the earned income tax credit. Here's the worst thing. I'll finish up with this as far as being off track. I bid on fezbidops.com all the time. We stopped actually about a year ago because we weren't winning anything. I bid a job. It was 500,000 pounds of steel. We were going to make mooring anchors for the Coast Guard. And basically, you get to see the bid what somebody else bid against you. We lost it. I bid 600,000 for 500,000 pounds of steel plus galvanizing. Done. I thought it was a great price. We wanted the work. I got beat by like $30,000. I looked up the company that beat me. It looked like the same size building we have at Hillary Company in Groton. When you look at the glass ceiling and the wages, they're an $11 an hour company, right? Which means all those people that work in that factory get the earned income tax credit. The police that work in that town, they get the earned income tax credit. The teachers that teach your kids, they get it. So I directly feel it. I lost that job directly to somebody that I'm subsidizing. Every single man, woman, and child in that town. I talked about Florida being 25%. Mississippi, 33% of the people that filed their taxes last year got the earned income tax credit. It's absolutely astounding. And how do we fix our problems up here? I don't know. I know one thing, our roof is leaking, and that's the federal funding. And here we are spinning our wheels up here. And it's frustrating for me to hear that we can't take care of our kids anymore. We can't take care of our retirees. If you are someone that comes through Connecticut often, sometimes every day, depending on what your business is, and you don't pay to use our roads, it is a user fee. And like I said, I felt like I got off track, but I think it all connects what I said. But in the end, it's going to be, you use that toll. Here's the other thing. When you hand that, this will probably make you mad or sad, I don't know, but when you hand that $100 to the toll booth to go over the George Washington Bridge, you know where that took? You know where that $100 goes?
The Port Authority of New York and New Jersey.
First it makes a stop in Washington, D.C., and it gets multiplied by 5. Because that road that they're talking about and that bridge, those are all 80/20 roads. The federal government pays 80% for that road, right? So when we do your investment, when you go through the toll in Boston, and say that costs you $20, whatever it is, you hand them the 20, that $20 bill goes right down to Washington, D.C., and it comes back as a $100 bill. And guess where that tax pot came from? Connecticut. So sometimes if we build up the funds that we can invest in our infrastructure, if we start having those other folks invest, maybe we can start throwing more money at it. Because your money's 5-1. Those are all facts. If it's a 95, if it's an interstate road, like right now, the $400 million project that we're looking at today on the northbound bridge, the federal government's going to pay $320 million of that, and we're going to pay 80. And I will remind you, we have a president right now that's in office that doesn't like that equation. He's saying that it should be flopped the other way, 2080. And when people tell me not to legislate for the future and don't worry about what someone's saying in Washington, I think we have to. And I'm not saying, and we know that 80-20 doesn't even have to really mean 80-20. He may be saying 80-20 as a starting point, and then all of a sudden it's, okay, 75-25. What does 75-25 do for us? Now that instead of paying the $320 million, they're paying less, $300 million, and then we pay $100 million. So we have to look at the big picture. And the big picture is the federal government borrowed $1 trillion last year to operate their budget. They're going to start looking at all these different ways to cut their budget, just like the state does to towns. And we have to be mindful of that.
Joe, look, looking through this paperwork, this is, I'd be honest with you, this is kind of disgusting because it has turned itself into a mudslinging game against Republicans, against Democrats, Democrats versus Republicans. We got to stop this whole thing.
I agree.
All right? That's number one. Okay? Because, the Republicans have a plan. Some of the Democrats have a plan. But there are some Democrats that are against tolls within their party. Okay? So, what I think it really comes down to is the common man. Us. The people in this room. What we're going to be paying. And as I got back saying before to you, I'm going to have to travel from Groton to Essex every day, and I did that little online calculator that the day paper just put out over the weekend. And my calculated cost is going to be about $516 a year, additional. Okay. Now, we have to take into consideration our wear and tear on our vehicles. During the wintertime, you know, you put the brine down on the roads, that eats away brake lines on the car. It eats away the undercarriage of the car. You know, we got the wear and tear on our vehicles that we have to maintain to keep our cars on the road, to keep it to DOT standards within the state. You know, those are all expenses that we have to take in consideration as people who travel the roads, go back and forth to work every single day. And now you're going to put tolls on top of it.
But I think,
You know,
but it goes to the fact that I
the
think,
fact is you cannot get blood from a stone anymore.
I know, but if you're seeing.
And that's
but
what
the
you're
blood's-
trying to do.
The way I see this whole situation though, is the toll is in your face and you've calculated that money already.
Yeah.
But you'll feel better not knowing how it comes out another way. Imagine this though, imagine, what town are you from?
I'm forgotten.
So now from Groton, and you own your home, and say the Republican pen does go through and we prioritize things. If they cut Groton's educational funding by, say, half, it goes down $12 million, right? And all of a sudden it shows up in your property tax. We as human beings feel better when we don't see it. We feel better when we don't know. When we pay property, most people I talk to don't know how much they're paying property tax on their home because it's mixed in their mortgage. So I mean, no matter, but just mind you, no matter how you get to work, that $65 million will be spent, and somehow, some way, you'll be paying for it. What I'm talking about tolls is somehow, some way, we're going to bring in the guy from Massachusetts to help us pay for our roads. Right now, there's no way that right now they have no connection to our road.
That's wishful thinking, Joe, because these people are not going to pay.
But if they don't pay,
You think that they have every
They-
person
they-
in Massachusetts
they're gonna
has
pay.
an
You're
easy
gonna have a
pass.
reciprocal
But
agreement.
you're going to spend more money going after these people. You're going to go more. You're going to have a special commission that's going to maintain these tolls, right? Is that what the plan is? To have a special commission to go after people in different states and
well,
like.
again, there's gonna be agreement signed once we get told.
So what you're saying to me is basically the out-of-state person that comes in and doesn't have an easy pass. Now we get people, now we're looking at Massachusetts, we're looking at New York, okay, New Jersey. Majority of them probably have an easy pass in their car. But what about people that come down from Canada? What about people that come down from Maine?
They get
In
pictures of their
all
license.
different areas of the country. We get people coming in through this state, especially during the summertime, because our influx of traffic doubles during the summertime, right? People don't all have easy passes in their car. And you know what? You gotta spend all this money trying to go after these people for $2 or $3 or whatever
But it
they
goes
owe.
back, you were here earlier when I told my story about a ticket from 1991 where they suspended my registration. I mean, so I paid, listen, I paid that ticket. 20 years later, I paid that ticket. Oh no, 91, 01, 11, almost 30 years ago. So that's gonna happen. They're gonna catch us and we're gonna catch them. Go ahead, Mark.
So just
That's
going
wishful
back to
thinking.
your Florida thing, yeah, I mean, people go down there from 65 to 75 until they get really sick.
Yeah.
And then they come back up here because our healthcare system is so good, so much better than Florida, and we take much better care of our elderly than Florida does, and I'm proud of that. And they might go down there until they're like 30, 35 and decide to have children, and then they see what the school system is down there, and they come back to Connecticut. So all these kids are all going to come back when it's time to have babies and they want to put them in school. But I think the one thing I am very in favor of tolls. It's a user fee. If you use the roads, you should pay for them. And I want our mass transportation so much better than what we have right now. That's what's going to bring the millennials here. They don't want cars. They want to be able to get in a train. They want to be able to get a bus and get to work. But is there anything that's going to happen for those that are lower income? That's certain. Like, is there different things out there that they're thinking about that
I mean, there's
could
so
help?
many-
Those are the people. I mean, that's honestly the people making less than $30,000-$40,000 a year. I do think it might hurt them.
And there are so many different things that they've come up with. Again, because it's smart toll and they know who you are, at the end of the year, if you fall below a certain income level, you'll be able to claim that on your taxes and get rebates if you're falling in that level. So the neediest of our state will be able to still drive. They also have some interesting things that if you live within a radius of a toll, you don't get charged for that toll because you can't go anywhere without getting on that one. So if that's within reach, there's a lot of creative things that they do. If you go to, and just so you know, when you do drive and you pay a toll in Massachusetts, if the guy in front of you has a Massachusetts plate, you better believe he's paying about half of what you're paying. And that's how it works, because if you have the easy pass from Massachusetts, you get the discount. Rep. Nolan.
There's also discussion in regards to getting your Easy Pass loaded.
you know, between $10 and $25, I think,
Yeah,
in regards to,
income.
yeah.
So they're gonna direct it
That's
towards
something-
the people's bank accounts too.
Yeah.
That's gonna go over like a fart in church, to be perfectly honest with you.
I have
Because
an
to be
easy
honest, with
pass.
you, I don't want the state of Connecticut, getting back to my friend who works for information technology for the state of Connecticut. You know that your servers up there are outdated for the state of Connecticut? You're still running on servers 2003. I work in IT, so I should know. These are production servers that they have. And some of the production servers manage the actual DMV. So these are outdated servers. So now you want to link the tolls directly to our personal bank accounts?
No,
I don't think so.
Just
It's
so
not
you
gonna happen.
know, just so you know, this,
Well, I read something that was gonna
No,
direct towards
Easy
bank
Pass.
accounts. I'm sorry.
Easy Pass, if anything, Easy Pass is, they're the world premiere in tolling. And in fact, we've been yelled at for saying, well, a person that was on the board about tolls works for Easy Pass. It's like saying, you know, I'm a sheet metal worker. Don't ask me about your electrical. They went and found a guy that does tolling and understands tolling. So that would never, it's gonna be your credit card or your bank account, whatever you wanna do to reload it, that's how that you reload your Easy Pass. I have a New Jersey Easy Pass. I've had a New Jersey Easy Pass for 20-something years because we were driving back and forth to Florida all the time. And if you didn't have an Easy Pass, you were just stuck behind the guy that didn't have his quarters or whatever else was happening. I don't wanna put that on camera because that's not how it works anymore, just in case you're listening out there. But, so, I would change in I'd get rid of my Easy Pass New Jersey, I'll get a Connecticut Easy Pass, and I'll get all the discounts that a Connecticut resident would get. That's how they're able to do the discount. The state can't give you a discount because you're a resident, but they can as a private company saying, you get a discount because you bought this Easy Pass, and that's how it would work. And I think that's where they were nervous about poor folks not being able to afford the Easy Pass and then getting charged full ride. So we are working on that. Okay.
What's the plan for, because we know the company that did this study has failed in its toll predictions and in its revenue futures in every state it's done it in, including Ohio, that bonded against its toll futures and is now in debt, I think, until 2048, and it's not going to be able to recoup that. Is there a plan, and if so, what is it, for when we fall short of that $1 billion mark?
Well, again, we're not gonna know what the tolls run exactly until it happens, just like any revenue. We don't know if traffic slows or goes up. One thing we do know is traffic does not seem to be slowing on the 95 corridor from New York to Boston. And there's no other way around it.
$10 million study and they can't tell you.
Nobody, I can tell you this. I can tell you this much. We always think of $10 million as this massive amount of money until you look at what they're looking at, until you look at what they're studying, until you can really roll out how many businesses it's affecting. The revenue could go down as a result of, they say, you know what, we charged a lot less for these tolls because it was so congested. We had all these people going in earlier. They saved more money than we thought. Until we see some real numbers, we won't know the exact number. And that's like any revenue. At the end of the year, we don't know how much we got from capital gains until we get it. We don't know a lot of things in the state. But what we do know is historically, on this road, we can predict how many cars are coming through, especially with Rhode Island being up there. We had no idea there were 200,000 trucks coming through that gate every year. We had no idea. Right now, we're kind of driving blind a little bit. And what's going to happen with these tolls is they're going to allow us to understand our state in a different way, I think.
Right, but
Like,
given this company's history, wouldn't it be smarter to to kind of shoot under what they've said? You know, if they said $1 billion, maybe we ought to operate on 700,000. Because I mean, they genuinely they've overshot in every state they've predicted in. So I mean, to me, it seems like bad math.
yeah, and sometimes bad math will get fixed inside the budget. Maybe we address that because that isn't exactly done. They're not going to bond against it until they bond against it. So we would have to, as a legislature, and that will be a fight on the floor, I'm sure, between people saying there's no way they're getting this much money, there's no way they get, or they're going to get this much money. And in the end, you know, it is tough. We don't know. We don't know how many people are on the roads now. We really don't know how many people are using our roads today. But again, they have really good predictors because they are using data from New York, from Rhode Island, from Boston. So they have a feeling of what's happening, but they don't really know who's on what road at what time. And they're going to know all that soon. But
So, Joe, let me ask you this question. So getting back to the bank account thing, because these individuals disagree with me. For according to the www.ct.gov Department of Transportation, it states pre-registered plates for motorists who choose to complete a one-time registration of their license plate with CT toll system and authorized payment directly connected to their credit card or bank account. Their toll, the toll for these users is assumed to be set in the midpoint of unregistered plates, users of the state Easy Pass user. The other question I have is, when the governor was running, how come he pledged to the people of the state of Connecticut that he wasn't going to toll passenger vehicles and only toll trucks?
I don't know why he pledged that, because I was probably part of the reason you guys are here and mad, because I was one of the guys yelling from the tower that we have to do it to everybody, that we have to bring everybody in. So he is running the show, but I think a lot of times you get elected and you see the absolute mountain of debt that we have, and it is an absolute mountain, and then you get to really see the inside numbers on the infrastructure. All along, I was saying that it should be cars.
So
you know,
would you say he lied to the people of the state?
I wouldn't say he lied. I think that he
I
basically.
think that's a lie. When you pledge something, that's a promise. Like, it's like, Joe, I say, you know what, I'm gonna give you $100 out of my wallet right now. And they say, okay, Joe, here's $100, but you know, I'm gonna give it to you later. And I shake your hand.
I think this was more of a
And I
case
meet you out in the
of-
parking lot, I say, Joe, you know what, I'm gonna renege on that $100, I'm not gonna give it to you.
Yeah, I think it was more of a case of seeing the numbers, understanding them after. Because again, I think once you become governor, now you're in the room with all these guys. And then I'm sure they didn't have these huge studies with Easy Pass ahead of this. So they see the numbers and realize maybe a little higher than they thought. They're saying that they think 40% of the people are driving through aren't Connecticut residents on 95. That's going to be all debatable. We're going to see all the numbers when it happens. And again, if it doesn't happen, I encourage everyone to go get an electric car. I mean,
It's not gonna happen, Joe.
but forget about the electric car even. My what? I use this as an example.
$1,000 in my pocket to go
No,
buy an
but
electric car.
no, but my wife. Forget the electric car for a minute. My wife had a car that was getting about 20 miles to the gallon, right? She went and traded in, got an SUV. It's a Honda CR-V, 4-cylinder SUV. It's big, it's roomy. She gets like 33 miles to the gallon. So without the state even knowing it, this goes back to revenue. Without us even knowing it, without Governor Lamont knowing, my wife cut her contribution to the state road fund in half, without anybody knowing. She didn't get an electric car. She didn't show up on any register saying that she got rid of this old car and she's driving a fuel efficient car. What happens when someone gets a car that gets 60 miles to the gallon? The hybrid, the Toyota. There's one that Honda has in front of their shop right now. It says 110 miles to the gallon. It's gasoline, hybrid, electric. So if you buy that, effectively you've eliminated yourself from any funds towards the actual highways and roads. Because other than your sales tax that you paid the day you bought the car,
Right.
but your property tax on your car only goes to local roads. So if you do get an electric car, you are no longer a member of a paying society for those roads, and you don't have to, and you could be a Connecticut resident. And that's why I got in an argument with Mike France on the radio, because he said his plan was, okay, you keep talking about electric cars, but when they come to a certain level, we'll just make people pay a flat fee for that electric car. That could mean a guy drives 2,000 miles a year, and there's a guy that drives 10 miles a year, and they pay the same flat fee. I don't agree with that. And then how do you charge a flat fee to the guy from Massachusetts and Rhode Island? How do you really do that? How does that work?
So what would you say the percentages on today? Cars on the road that are electric, gas and electric. Because I've seen-
0.5% of registered cars in Connecticut today.
0.5.
0.5%, half of 1%. But when I got elected in 2016, it was 0.2. We've seen a doubling, and everyone goes, it's still only 0.5. Yeah, but that's called a trend. I work in a business. When I see EB ramping up, we hire more people. When we see little trends and little trinkets of information of what's happening, we ramp up to meet the needs of what they're saying. To me, 0.2% to 0.5% is a major trend. And then,
Grandma down the street that's on a fixed income, right?
yeah.
Do you think she's gonna be able to whip out $30,000 out of her fixed
She
income?
won't.
She
And
doesn't
that's-
drive very far.
But that even goes.
What if she does? What if she has to go see her?
But it even goes more to the point of why we need tolls. Because say, now that person now I'm poor, I can't afford a fuel efficient car, I can't afford an electric car. But the people that have money can. And now all of a sudden 10% of these people buy electric cars, they're eliminated from paying. Now the burden falls more on me, right? Go ahead, Rob.
But doesn't this, my understanding is the state encourages, I don't get your.
The state and federal government do.
Well, yeah, you get, the Connecticut Green Bank as a quasi-public state agency.
Absolutely.
And I just read that they give incentives, so the state is part of that process.
They
So
are.
I don't get your example there.
Well, state and federal government is, because eventually we're gonna get away completely from gasoline cars. I mean, we'll all be long, long gone, but eventually it will be electric or however it's powered. Gasoline is not gonna be forever, and they're trying to incentivize that. Just to give you an example, Google the 60 Minutes episode where they were in China. China has pledged to build 5 million electric cars in the next 5 years. But what they've also done is this. It costs $14,000 to have a license in China, a driver's license. $14,000. If you buy an electric vehicle in China, they waive that. And everyone says, why are they doing that? Why would you incentivize people to drive electric? Well, it's more than just clean, green, all that other stuff. It becomes an actual proprietary knowledge that they gain from building all these cars and batteries. So right now, the future of the world is in battery storage. How do you store electricity efficiently? If they commit to build 5 million cars, and they are, they're basically going to be winning the battery war. How do you keep storing? So America, in a lot of different ways, it's interconnected in so many different ways. They want to make sure that manufacturers in America are selling these electric cars. Not just because it's green, but because it also provides a lot of different ways to learn how to store energy. Eventually, there might be a battery on the side of your house. Maybe they're saying the Tesla people are predicting it's going to be 100 years from now, where they have a battery that can store energy and it just trickles in from a small source. So that's why they do it. It seems counterproductive, but it really isn't. It's a national defense of our country. It's everything to make sure that we're keeping even with China. And the fact that they're going to build 5 million of them. And if you saw China too, I mean, on the roads, we all think of them as this third world country that has nothing like we have. But watch that show. And basically, all these people have anyone that has it, and this is China, it couldn't happen in America, but he walks in the big room, the 60 Minutes guy, and there's hundreds of thousands of lights up on that board. And he says, these are all the electric cars in your city right now? And he said, no, that's just the Teslas. And the reason they keep track of them is the computer reads where all these cars are every day. And it determines where they need to put charging stations. It determines where there should be like a fix-it lot, where, again, if you have an electric car from your phone in China, and it shows up that it's empty, like the battery's low, you press the thing, send it to your phone, a guy comes up with a supercharged van, plugs it in, it fills it up, and then he sends you something back. If your battery is telling you that the battery doesn't work anymore, and it's bad, they have a tractor trailer that drives around China, it pulls up, they pull your electric vehicle into it, and from out of the bottom, it robotically takes the old battery out, disposes of it, brings a new battery up and puts it in. That is the future. And that's why when people, and this is on 60 Minutes, this is happening today in China. I'll leave it at this. Just remember one thing. We're all walking away. Please don't leave here thinking, if we don't put tolls on the road, I've been saved and I owe nothing. Make sure that you know for certain that if tolls don't go on the road, we are going to bond for $65 billion, and it will be Connecticut and Connecticut residents only that pay for it. So those are things to think about. Those are facts. So, just keep that in mind when you're thinking about tolls. It's either just a few of us paying for it, or getting a little bit of help from out-of-state folks that use our roads. So I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. We've done our time. Thank you guys for coming.